Welcome into the Big 12 preview show. I'm Brandon Shanahan, the final edition of our Power 5 preview series. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined with Nugget the Cat right behind me. He's having a snooze. He worked hard to get the show ready for you. Also worked hard to get the other four conferences done. So if you haven't already checked those out, very in-depth looks at all five power conferences. As always, we're going through week by week for the Big 12, predicting every single game for every single team. And as always, we're going to kind of go through each team and talk about what we like, what we don't like. It's kind of a starting point, and then we'll start breaking down the games. But the Big 12, I think I'd save the best for last. The Big 12 is my favorite conference. It certainly helps living in DFW where there's more opportunities for me to actually go see these teams play. But between the psycho Big 12 burners on Twitter and quirky traditions and mascots, I think moving forward, this is going to be the most pure and joyful conference in power college football. 3 different champions in the last 3 years. And now that Oklahoma is leaving the conference, that really opens up basically a power vacuum moving forward. And with the addition of some really good and hungry football brands, some that even may have been down on their luck recently, but looking to kind of revamp themselves. So I'm so excited to see how this conference shapes up. But let's get started with the teams that are leaving the conference after this year. Texas. I'm being told on paper that they should be the best team in the conference. And I see what they see. I see a ton of stars on this roster, but isn't that always the case with Texas? When have we ever said, man, Texas is just a few talented players away from contending, or man, this Texas team just isn't as talented, or man, this Texas recruiting class just isn't all that? Now, with that said, I do believe that Sark is the guy. And I think that this was an A+ hire. And now that he's had a few years to get his feet underneath him, the training wheels are off now. And this is such a big opportunity for them to build some momentum before things get a hell of a lot harder next year in the SEC. So this is really an opportunity for them to feast on the Big 12. And if they're going to be as good as they want to be going forward, and if they want to compete with the SEC, this is a year that's so important for building that momentum. I've also been told that Quinn Ewers is going to be the reason that they're back. I'm not too sure if those folks watched more than the Alabama game last year. He sure did show flashes, don't get me wrong. And if you're betting on a quarterback, one where he's tangibly shown that he can compete at the highest level, feels like a good and exciting wager. I get it. I'm wary because I also saw him play against Alabama. He looked great, but I also saw him towards the end of the season. I saw him not be able to throw for more than 200 yards in the final 4 Big 12 games that he played last year. Now, I'd argue that this is a good case that the media overblows how bad the Big 12 defenses are, but you can't have it both ways. You can't have Quinn Ewers struggle against the Big 12 defenses and then not have that count towards how you view Quinn Ewers. Or you can go the other way and say the Big 12 defenses are actually legit and they've improved over the last few years, and that's why Quinn Ewers struggled. But with that said, they bring back everybody on offense minus Bijan Robinson, so I can absolutely imagine him taking a step up where if he does, watch out. But that's all projection. That's the thing with Texas. It's all projection. And while I've constantly seen Texas underachieve, the burden of proof is on them now. And I've been watching a whole lot of Suits lately. So burden of proof is a key phrase for both Texas and the next team we're going to talk about, Oklahoma. Same burden of proof requirement I just laid out for Texas is required for the Sooners. And on the top end of college football, there's probably no school I've defended more over the last half decade than the Sooners. And wow, was it a rough go last year. Now, if I were to sell you on them bouncing back, I'd point to them losing a lot of their talent, to the team not to be mentioned out in Southern California. They have a first-time head coach, so some bumps are expected in that process. They had to rebuild their roster through the transfer portal. I'd also point to their 5 close losses, which they weren't even able to pick up one close loss. It was either they blew them out or they lost close. And now that's a trend that's really hard to replicate year to year, whether it's you lose all your close games or you win all your close games. Now, unless you're Nebraska, then you always lose all your close games all the time. It is what it is. But I expect Oklahoma to at least come back to earth a little bit in that way. Dylan Gabriel dealt with a concussion early into Big 12 play, so it's really tough, especially with head injuries, to kind of see how they bounce back. It didn't seem like he was really ever the same until very late in the season. So I could very easily tell you that those are trends pointing to Oklahoma coming back, taking a huge step up. And even if they just come back to earth with those trends, the stability of having the same coach from a year ago, the same quarterback from the same system, and even if they just have a few less close losses, I could see them getting back to the Big 12 title game and building some crucial momentum heading out east next year. But like I said, the burden of proof is on them. And we talk about projection with Texas. I haven't seen Brett Venables get results here at Oklahoma so far. Now, granted, it's been 1 year, so I'm not going to hit the panic button. There are people saying that he's on the hot seat coming into year 2. I don't know if that's true, but at the end of the day, you got to find ways to win. That's the important thing. It doesn't matter how talented the roster is. It doesn't matter how good of a scheme that you have and how good of a coach you are. As a Husker fan, I've seen seemingly a talented head coach with a really good roster never find success because bad breaks defined them and they weren't able to get over the hump. And they were good at football, they were good at offense, they were good at defense, but they weren't good at winning. So this is the year where Oklahoma can nip those trends in the bud and get back to the top tier college football. If I'm trying to sell you on disaster, this feels a lot like it could go the same way as Nebraska the last half decade. Now that's worst case scenario for sure, but I'm seeing a lot of similarities. I don't think Oklahoma fans would be too happy with. Kansas State. As a newfound TCU fan, it took a little while for me to hop on the Kansas State bandwagon. In fact, it wasn't really until they started throwing out Chris Klieman's name for the head coaching opening at Nebraska. Now, that was all Husker fans. I don't think there's clearly never any momentum there. But that's when I dove into his accomplishments and what he did at North Dakota State, and now what he's been able to do at Kansas State early into his tenure. It's been remarkable. He also gets brownie points for taking in Husker quarterback legend Adrian Martinez and got him a conference championship ring and really gave him a taste of what a successful college football program looks like. But I'm not going to go on my bandwagon with a Husker pity party. This team was good last year, and even with Martinez getting hurt, Will Howard immediately came in and played awesome. And the defense is going to have some new faces for sure. They have to reload on the back end of that defense as well. But I'm a big believer in Klieman and a big believer in Will Howard. He could very well be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. And if they keep trending up like they've been the last couple of years, they could very well be the future of the Big 12. TCU. The Horned Frogs are also a contender to be the next face of the Big 12, especially after being the only Big 12 team in this conference to win a playoff game. Whether you're talking about this current iteration, the iteration next year, the iteration last year, they're the only Big 12 team in the playoff history to win a playoff game. So that's definitely significant. This year is going to be a good test on what I think the program's floor is going to look like under Sonny Dykes. Now, while they did play for a national championship last year, they lose a lot of players who are going to be playing on Sundays this year, and we'll have a ton of new faces. Now, I do believe they're still going to be very talented, and I've heard things that they're going to be a very physical team and really being able to fill those holes in well. And let's not forget that last year, Max Duggan, Heisman runner-up, he was QB2 going into week 1 behind Chandler Morris going into that Colorado game. So what that tells me is that the staff saw both of these guys every day in practice, knowing Duggan has a ton of game reps under his belt, way more than Chandler Morris, and thought their best chance to win was with Morris. So that tells me a lot. Now, I don't know if anybody realistically could have foreseen how great Mad Max was last year, but I think it's very telling how much the staff believes in and trusts Morris. I do think arguably the biggest loss on the offense isn't even Max, isn't first round wide receiver Quentin Johnston or Saints running back Keandre Miller, but it could very well be offensive coordinator Garrett Riley, who left them for Clemson in the offseason. They bring in Arkansas offensive coordinator Kendall Briles, which, by the way, feels like a wild landing spot for any coach with that last name. But if he's the guy that Sonny trusts, then who am I to doubt him? And Sonny, we trust for sure. Certainly earned that. You buy a little leeway when you make it to a national championship game. Now, they're also the beneficiary of nearly every close game that they played in, which would indicate, taking a step back. You don't typically get those good breaks year to year. But like I said, with everything pointing down for the Frogs, this could be where we see the floor for Dykes and company moving forward. And, if they come out with 8-9 wins, that's a really good sign for TCU going forward, because as they rebuild and get some more consistency under Dykes and seeing if KB can maintain that offense momentum, that's a dangerous combination. Baylor. Just like how I said this is going to be the year where we see the floor for TCU, I think last year was where we got to see the floor for Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears. Fresh off their Big 12 championship the previous year, where we kind of took a peek at probably their ceiling as a program going forward. The writing was certainly on the wall for for a step back. They had to replace a ton of talent at a ton of key positions, had a tough road slate in the conference. Typically, things aren't going to be as hard for Baylor as they were last year. So this year, they should be trending up. We'll more likely get to see what Baylor's average looks like under the Aranda administration. The vision is hoping that junior quarterback Blake Shapen could be more refined with more reps. Another offseason under his belt could be the difference maker in some of these close games. And so hopefully that's kind of going to be the difference there is just more refined quarterback play. He doesn't have to be special, but, more refined and more consistent throughout the year would be huge for the Bears. Texas Tech. Big fan of Joey McGuire. I mean, I was all in on him last year. We went through this whole journey where I looked for a new college football team to root for. Texas Tech was on that list because of Joey McGuire. Now, granted, I did end up a bit disappointed early on the season, but as they got settled, they secured their first winning season in conference in a decade. And everywhere I see Red Raider fans or any look into the program, all I see is optimism and excitement. There's certainly good reason for it. Joey McGuire, more than any other coach I've seen, especially at Texas Tech or any school on that same kind of tier as Texas Tech, feels like he believes that this is the best program in the world. And that trickles down to the staff, that trickles down to the athletes, that trickles down to the passionate Red Raider fan base. And, I certainly see that in his son, Nebraska wide receiver coach Garrett McGuire as well. It's intoxicating. And the kind of culture that you need to establish and thoroughly at a place like Texas Tech, I'm bought in. We'll see how things shape up for the Red Raiders this year, but the future is certainly bright. They bring back 11 starters on offense and could very well jump ahead of schedule in year 2 if things fall their way. Oklahoma State. I think a lot is going to be made about them losing quarterback Spencer Sanders, and that's certainly significant. They also lose leading rusher Dominic Richardson, but they still bring back 13 starters from last season. They surprised me over the offseason with how well they hit the transfer portal. They picked up Dejon Stribling, who could be wide receiver 1 or 2 going into the season, and they're certainly betting on Arlen Bruce from Iowa. And they took some flyers on some other players from the lower levels that could certainly pop. And if they hit on those, then watch out. Oklahoma State's not going anywhere. But it also feels easy to say that they'll take another step back, but also kind of feels like this is where Coach Mike Gundy likes to be, likes his team to be under the radar, and he likes to grind out successful seasons with maybe less talent than some of the counterparts we already talked about. Central Florida, 2017 national champions under Husker legend Scott Frost. It's a great add to the Big 12. I'm super excited about them. They might be the best built to compete among the newcomers early on in the Big 12 landscape here. They bring back 8 starters on offense, including their leading rusher and signal caller quarterback, John Reese Plumlee. They head to Manhattan to face the defending conference champs in their first ever Big 12 matchup, which really should give us a good gauge on how well they'll adjust to the new conference in year 1. But in a hotbed of great talent over there in Central Florida, they're going to be in good shape here. And I think the question is not if they can get acclimated to Big 12, but when. Iowa State. Certainly, any optimism has been largely drowned out with the extended scent of gambling-related offenses with key players, including quarterback Hunter Deckers. I certainly love what Matt Campbell has done over the years. This will certainly be his toughest test. Just handling not only coming off a 4-8 season, having to replace talent like Brock Purdy and Breece Hall, but also having to kind of answer a lot of the questions off the field and dealing with any of those distractions. Now, they are losing a bunch of key players who had a lot of reps last year, but none of them crazy talented. Like Hunter Deckers had more turnovers than anybody in the FBS, and he's kind of leading the way as far as importance for this team. So we'll see how that goes. There's certainly a path for them to not be horrible, but that's probably the nice thing you can kind of say about them going into the season, with or without the gambling scandal. Kansas, Rock Chalk, baby. This team's going to be electric. They're coming off their first bowl game appearance since 2008. They bring back 10 starters on offense, including quarterback Jalen Daniels, and if he can take another step up, they might somehow top their 36-point per game mark from a year ago, which sounds crazy from Kansas. Their defense is still a few steps behind their offense, but they're still trending upwards. They gave up 42 points per game in Leopold's first year. Then they got better by a touchdown. They averaged 35 points per game last season. And if they can make another jump like that and keep trending in the same direction with their offenses, they could really be Big 12 contenders here in this new era. BYU. I'm so excited for the Cougars to finally get their crack in the Power 5 conference. I didn't know a whole lot about them other than they beat Nebraska a few years ago with, I think Nebraska had Mike Riley at the time. That was embarrassing, but they beat them. And then, of course, Zach Wilson and his legend coming from BYU. But other than that, the more that I learned about their fan base and their team, I mean, the more excited I am that they're going to be a part of the Big 12, and the more I think that they're just such a great fit. And if you don't want to take my word for it, they did set the Nevada college athletic record with attendance for their game against Notre Dame on a neutral site, by the way. And on the field, they've certainly shown they can compete with these teams. They had a double overtime win against Baylor just last season. They went 5-0 against the Pac-12 the year prior, and they add journeyman quarterback Keaton Slovis to fit in with the 8 returning starters on offense. They do lose more than 1,500 rushing yards worth of production from last year, but if they can get bodies in to kind of eat up some of that production, they'll be just fine. West Virginia. The Mountaineers have a great chance to really grind out some wins this season. They bring back 4 running backs with more than 280 rushing yards and multiple touchdowns from a season ago. Bring back their entire offensive line from last year, and their defensive line is mostly intact. If they're winning games, it's ugly. It's going to be a great watch. Head coach Neil Brown has a track record of pulling off upsets. They pulled off 2 last year against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, where they're dogs by a touchdown plus heading in. And assuming they can find ways to win games that they're not supposed to, bowl games very much on the table for West Virginia. Houston. I feel like among the 4 newcomers, Houston gets the rap that they're going to be the basketball school. They're just running out the clock until basketball season. And they could certainly fall the deepest behind, but I'm not too sure if I'm missing something here. And now, don't get me wrong, it's such a deep conference. They very well could finish towards the bottom, mostly just because somebody has to. So it's easy to point to the newcomer, but Daniel Holgerson knows what success and failure looks like in this conference from his time at West Virginia. And they were close to another AAC championship appearance last season. They lost to SMU 77-63 in shootout fashion. So the offense really got after it. And then they got upset by Tulsa late in the year. They do replace their leading rusher and veteran quarterback Clayton Tune, which will be a tough task for Houston. But if they can find competent quarterback play, that offense should still be pretty electric, and they could really be in some classic Big 12 shootouts even early on here. Cincinnati. Roll Cats, baby. I'm a huge believer in Cincinnati. So excited for them to be in the Big 12. Now, granted, a lot of that belief stems from Luke Fickell being the leading man. So replacing him is going to be my biggest question for them, as I'm sure as it is for everybody. But given their distinct home field advantage and how they play at home, they can really catch some big teams off guard when they visit, especially that first time around, maybe not knowing what to expect. And their home schedule is pretty favorable this year. If they can steal one from Oklahoma early on, they very well could win all of their home games this year, despite returning just 9 starters, 3 on offense, and having to revamp their roster amid the coaching change. Now, it might take a year or two for their feet to get settled, but it'll be very important for Cincinnati to catch as much momentum as they can this year. But now that Oklahoma's leaving, they're going to be just the second Big 12 team to make a playoff in the CFP history. So that's certainly a winnable program, especially now that you're getting more recruiting ties in the Texas area and now even out west a little bit with the Four Corners schools. So Cincinnati's going to be in good shape. It's just a matter of what those growing pains look like. But that's kind of how I feel about the Big 12. I'm excited for them. Like I said, it's my favorite conference, but so let's start picking some games. Week 1, UCI picks up the win against Kent State, Kansas, and Missouri State. I think Kansas State, we see that offense flourish early. TCU and Colorado, first big noon game of the season. Texas Christian and Colorado, I think, like I said, TCU, I think they take a step back. Colorado, I think they take a step up. But I still think there's a pretty big gap here. I think TCU wins pretty comfortably at home. Oklahoma picks up the win against Arkansas State. Iowa State, Iowa State fans are nervous about this game. I'm very dialed in. We also have a show with Drew Russell, who's a lifelong Iowa State fan. He says this game spells trouble for the Cyclones. I think they take care of business. It might be closer than Vegas will tell you, but yeah, you give me the Cyclones in week 1. Cincinnati over Eastern Kentucky, Texas over Rice, Kansas State over Southeast Missouri State, Oklahoma State over Central Arkansas. This one gets dicey. UTSA, a great group of 5 team, probably one that's kind of eyeing, kind of being at the top of the group of 5 here going forward. Houston at home. Give me the Cougars. Give me the Cougars. I think in my game day picks, I picked UTSA, but that was really before I dove in pretty well on Houston here. Baylor and Texas State gave me the Bears. The Bears. Texas State picks up the win on the road at Wyoming. West Virginia and Penn State. I think this is the first loss for the Big 12 this season. Beaver Stadium's a beast. I don't know how many Big 12 teams could pick up a win against that team. BYU does pick up a win at home against Sam Houston. All right, so after week 1, every team's 1-0 except for West Virginia. Again, they certainly get the toughest draw out of all the teams here, but great stuff for the Big 12 early. Another Power 5 versus Power 5 matchup, Illinois and Kansas. I really do like Illinois. I like what Brett Bielema's doing. I like where their program's trending. But I do think that Kansas picks up the win here. I trust Jalen Daniels over whoever the Illini quarterback is. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. This one's certainly tricky. I think I'm going to give Pittsburgh the benefit of the doubt here just because they're at home. I think if it's in Cincinnati, that makes it a whole lot tougher. But I do like Pittsburgh in the ACC to maybe not compete for the ACC title, but certainly be in that second tier of teams. Baylor and Utah, soon to be Big 12 matchup coming in. I'm so high on the Utes. Again, depending on how available Cam Rising is, that's the difference for me here. As of right now, I haven't heard for certain that he's not going to be in. So I'm going to give this one to the Utes. Not that I'm going to make any amendments to any of these picks, but if I didn't think that Cam Rising was going to play, I would pick Baylor. Troy and Kansas State, give me the Wildcats. Southern Utah and BYU, Brigham Young, Iowa State and Iowa. I am a big Iowa hater, but I think they pick up the win pretty comfortably here. And I say comfortably, I mean they do win the game. I don't think that they have a good enough offense to pull away from Iowa State, even with their defensive struggles. It is what it is. Oklahoma picks up the win against Southern Methodist. West Virginia, and I don't know how to pronounce that school, so that's an easy pick for West Virginia. Oregon and Texas Tech. I'm so high on the Pac-12. I think if there's a team that stumbles early, it's this kind of situation. Going to Lubbock, I just went on that whole ordeal about how much I love Joey McGuire. This could be a huge trap for Oregon, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Bo Nix and Dan Lanning. I think Oregon has more college football playoff aspirations. Not saying that they're a college football playoff team, but I think that's the perception within the locker room going into the season. So I think they know that they have this one circled on the calendar. Like, we cannot lose this, especially having to go through the track of the Pac-12. I don't think that's set up too well for them. We're going to skip the Texas game. Central Florida picks up the win against Boise State. Houston picks up another win against Rice. The Bayou Bucket Classic. Let's go. That's a fun name. I don't know if that's a sponsor or what that is, but that's a cool name. Bayou Bucket Classic. TCU picks up the win against Nichols. I don't know, but I'll be there, so I'm excited for that. Roll Frogs. And here's another thing about TCU. I don't know why their mascot's the Horned Frogs, but they don't ribbit. Like they cheer and they boo. I just feel like, especially for it being a smaller stadium, that it'd be more intimidating to have 50,000 people just start ribbiting at you. I don't know. I don't make the rules, but that's one that I would make. Oklahoma State and Arizona State. Ooh-wee. I'm not very high on Oklahoma State or Arizona State for that matter. First-year head coach in Tempe. I think that's the difference. Year 19 for Mike Gundy. I think they're able to pick up a win here. And also a lot of bad stuff happening with Arizona State. They're enforcing a self bowl ban this year. So I think that there's a lot of dysfunction going on that even we don't know about, because we know that about a lot of dysfunction there, but able to, I think Oklahoma at least stable enough to pick up. Oh, I forgot to talk about Texas, Alabama. I was saving that game because it's so fun. Um, I don't have any objective analysis behind this, but I'm picking up on the same vibes as the Alabama USC opener from a few years ago. I mean, you see those two blue blood brands on the same field, you get excited, but one is at a different class than the other. And I'm getting that same kind of vibe here. I think that we love seeing Texas and Alabama on the same field. We saw how fun that game was last year, but I don't think that we see that same game here. Tuscaloosa, totally different ball game. If I'm gonna sell you on Texas, it's gonna be because Alabama's implementing a new quarterback, but I don't think that there's a way that whoever that they put out there is going to be very bad. So give me the Tide. All right, real quick, we got a substitution. We got the dog now instead of the cat. That's a win. All right, back to it. So after week 2, everybody's played 2 games. Oh, the dog's leaving. That's all right. After week 2, everybody has played 2 games. Everybody but Cincinnati, Houston, Texas, Texas Tech, and West Virginia are at 1-0. And everybody else is at 2-0. So that's good. Week 3, I'm excited for this matchup. I don't think it's going to be very competitive. I think Kansas State wins pretty comfortably, but my Big 12 nostalgic heart so happy that these guys are playing again. Just seeing them on the same ticker again is something that I'm super stoked for. Iowa State and Ohio. I don't think Iowa State has a lot of wins on the schedule. I think they got to get this one. Baylor, I think they win here. They stay 3-0. Oklahoma and Tulsa going down the road to Tulsa. I don't think they have a problem there. I don't think UCF has a problem there. Oklahoma State doesn't have a problem. Cincinnati doesn't have a problem. West Virginia, I think they have a little bit of a problem. I think that they're in a bit of trouble here. Let's see. Close game last year. You know what? I'm gonna give it to them. I'm gonna give it to West Virginia at home. I think if it's in Pittsburgh, maybe I don't feel the same. But yeah, give me the Mountaineers. BYU and Arkansas. I like Arkansas a lot. They have a lot of new pieces on offense. They do have KJ Jefferson, who I trust a little bit more than Keaton Slope this year, especially at home. Maybe if they're in Provo, it switches the tide a little bit. Texas gets back on track with the win against Wyoming. First Big 12 matchup of the season, TCU and Houston. I like TCU here close. I think if it's one of those weird games like the Big Ten will do where it's in the first week of the season, maybe give me Houston, Chandler Morris, and the new offense having some growing pains, but they get 2 comfortable wins in back-to-back weeks. I think that they're in a little bit better shape to win this one. And then Kansas gets a win against Nevada. Watch out for Kansas. Overall, good start for the Big 12. Baylor, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, TCU, and UCF, all 3-0 heading into week 4. Even the teams without perfect records still just have 1 loss. We'll see how that changes here as we start to get into Big 12 play. BYU and Kansas. I like Kansas. I mean, I'm just I'm a big fan of them. I Again, if it's in Provo, I don't know. I still like Kansas. I think they're trending all the way up here. UCF and Kansas State, the Knights' first Big 12 game against the defending champs. I like Kansas State at home. West Virginia and Texas Tech. Give me the Red Raiders. They keep it rolling. The Mountaineers fall. Oklahoma and Cincinnati. I love Cincinnati, and I love them at home. I think it's going to be. I think a lot of Big 12 teams are going to get tripped up in their first trip to Cincinnati, just not knowing, not thinking anything of it. I like Oklahoma, not by much. This is this is a game that is going to set up the patch of the Big 12 championship for Oklahoma. I think that they have just better aspirations than Cincinnati. I think TCU wins pretty comfortably against Southern Methodist, Baylor, and Texas. Watch out, Longhorns. I think they pick up the win, but watch out. You're going to get everybody's best game on your way out. Watch out. Oklahoma State and Iowa State. I like the Cowboys. And then Houston over Sam Houston. All right, so heading into week 5, undefeated teams stay undefeated, if I'm not mistaken. Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, all undefeated. Baylor, Houston, Texas Tech, and Central Florida, all with 1 loss. So far, so good here for the Big 12, I think. Week 5 should be a good one. Cincinnati and BYU. Man, this will be a fun one. I'm going to give BYU the benefit of the doubt here. Man, do I, though? Man, I don't think Cincinnati's going to be as bad as everybody says they are. Yeah. If it's in Cincinnati, I'd probably give it to the Bearcats, but not here. Oklahoma takes care of Iowa State pretty easily. Texas and Kansas. Watch out, Longhorns. I think they win, but watch out. UCF and Baylor. Oh, boy. I don't want to underestimate the travel of going from Waco, Texas to Central Florida and Orlando. Gus Malzahn, Dave Aranda. Baylor is trending up, so I like that for them. Central Florida, John Reese Plumlee. Give me Baylor. I don't feel great about it, but give me Baylor. TCU beats West Virginia. Texas Tech beats Houston. A couple of teams get their first bye, so we don't see anything from Kansas State, so they stay undefeated. Oklahoma State still stays at 4-0. Undefeated teams include Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU. 5-0 for TCU is a lot better than I had them at first. Baylor's at 4-1. Kansas is at 4-1. Texas and Texas Tech at 4-1. I guess that's shaping up pretty well. I don't feel very good about these games with the new additions. I thought I'd struggle with that a little bit. I'm struggling even more than I thought I would. Kansas State and Oklahoma State. I think Kansas State's the better team, but I think they've also been known to lose a couple of dumb games that they shouldn't. So I'll give this one to Oklahoma State. Red River rivalry in the Cotton Bowl. Texas and Oklahoma. Texas rolled last year. I don't think Oklahoma's going to take too kindly to that. So let's break this down later. We'll circle back to this. UCF and Kansas. Give me give me hesitant, but yeah, give me Kansas. Texas Tech and Baylor. Give me Texas Tech. I like the Red Raiders. Yeah, and I don't think Baylor's that rowdy of a home environment to make the difference there. TCU wins in Ames. Texas and Oklahoma. So head coach, I like Sark over Venables. I like Quinn Ewers over Dylan Gabriel, I'd say. Yeah, give me Texas. I think, man, Oklahoma's just a step behind. I also think that with the loss to Alabama, Texas might be a little bit more battle tested. I think you also got to factor in they're probably they probably cancel out Oklahoma's desperateness to get another win in the win column against Texas, just because well, if they lose another game, they're probably not making the playoff. So, I mean, maybe they get the benefit of the doubt since that game's to Alabama, but you're really asking for a lot there. So after week 6, undefeated teams remaining, Oklahoma State and TCU. I don't think I feel very good about that. I mean, it is what it is, though. I guess I think TCU has a good schedule to well, yeah. And then, like I said, I think Kansas State's the better team compared to Oklahoma State, but Boone Biggins is tough to play. West Virginia and Houston. This feels like an opportunity for Houston to pick up their first Big 12 win. Again, don't overlook traveling across 2 time zones. Wait, no, it would just be 1 time zone. I guess that's not a huge factor, but still give me Texas. Houston, excuse me. Kansas and Oklahoma State. I think, oh man, Kansas. I think Oklahoma State's really feeling themselves after the man, but that means that Kansas is going to go to 6-1. I guess they had a kind of a hot start last year as well. Cincinnati beats Iowa State. They pick up their first Big 12 win. I really like Cincinnati. I'm really working to find wins for them here. Texas Tech and Kansas State. Man, Kansas State, it's a tough spot. I think they do pick up the win. I think they're a little, yeah. I think Kansas State loses either to Texas Tech or Oklahoma State. I don't know if they win. I don't think they win both. I don't think they lose both. So yeah, give me that. TCU and BYU. Again, I like TCU here. I mean, what is that? 7-0. That feels very generous. New offensive coordinator, new quarterback, like 5 offensive starters back. 7-0, huh? That doesn't feel too good. So then that leaves TCU as the last undefeated Big 12 team. That seems. It's their schedule, though, man. I mean, well, let's see if we really missed anything egregious here. Colorado was the worst Power 5 team last year. I don't think I'm crazy for picking TCU comfortably there. Nichols, yeah, that's a game that they should win. TCU at Houston, maybe. Houston's losing a lot too, so I don't think that's crazy. TCU doesn't play in week. No, they play SMU. They always beat SMU. For the Iron Skillet, yeah. I mean, maybe I guess it's a rivalry game, but I'm not confident enough to pick them there. West Virginia, I don't think they're very good. TCU on the road to Iowa State. Ames is tough. I think I think that's tough, but I don't think Iowa State's going to be any good. If I had to give one back, it probably would be BYU, but I don't know. I do see a loss for them here. Give me Kansas State. Well, nip that right in the bud. Boom, TCU's not undefeated anymore. Texas Tech and BYU. Didn't they play last year? How did that go? I think Texas Tech beat them barely. Oh no, BYU played Baylor last year. Double overtime. All right. Who do we like more, Texas Tech or BYU? That's back-to-back tough road games for Texas Tech. I don't know. Well, okay, yeah, they lose to Kansas State last week. They bounce back and beat BYU here. UCF and Oklahoma off the bye week in Norman. No. West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Do you know what? This feels like an upset that Neil Brown can pull off. Especially at this point, he's at 2-4, staring down the barrel at 2-5. Not a whole lot of winnable games on the schedule going forward. Give me West Virginia there to pull off the upset. Cincinnati beats Baylor. Cincinnati's a tough place to play. That's one place where I'm definitely excited to give them the benefit of the doubt. Texas and Houston. Watch out, Longhorns. I think they win, but watch out. All right, so looking at the Big 12 standings here. Now they're starting to get into Big 12 play. Have a couple of teams at 6-1: Kansas State, Oklahoma, TCU now joining the conference with the loss. Texas at 6-1, but 4-0 in the conference. They're the only team left undefeated in Big 12 play, so they're definitely in control. Let's see here. Texas Tech, TCU, Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Kansas, all with one loss. Tech's already head-to-head wins over Kansas and Oklahoma. So starting to take a familiar shape. I mean, a combined, what is that? 12 and 2 for Oklahoma and Texas. That feels generous, but I mean, we're seeing it play out. It's not out of the question here. Oklahoma and Kansas. Man, if I respected Lawrence a little bit more, I think I'd be willing to pull the trigger there. Texas and Provo, maybe it's a different story, but going to Austin, I think is a tough break for the Cougars. Speaking of Cougars, I think they fall to Kansas State, Manhattan, Oklahoma State, and Cincinnati. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Mike Gundy, the coach over Satterfield. I know what I'm getting with him. And these, again, in Cincinnati, maybe it's a different story, but not in Stillwater. Boy, that brings them to 6-2. That feels generous. UCF and West Virginia. I think Central Florida picks up their first win of their Big 12 era. Baylor and Iowa State. Boy, I would have given this one to Iowa State if it was in Ames. I'm at the point where I'm kind of hunting for a win from them, but I don't see it. Baylor wins here. All right, so now we just have one team without a win in the Big 12 in Iowa State, and one team without a loss in the Big 12 in Texas. Other teams still in the hunt for Arlington, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Oklahoma, and TCU, all with one loss. Next tier, Kansas, Oklahoma State with 2 losses, and then it kind of drops off from there. Week 10, we're getting into the stretch of things here. TCU and Texas Tech. What is it? The West Texas Championship. I don't know if I'd give. I don't know if I'd consider Fort Worth West Texas. But I guess yeah, who knows? Either way, I think Texas Tech is the West Texas champion. I feel like that's pretty fair. Yeah, give me Texas Tech there. Now I feel a little bit better given TCU 2 losses. They do come off the bye. Well, so does Texas Tech. So that'll be a fun one. They announced what channel that's going to be on, FS1. Might want to make that a Fox Noon game, depending on what else they got going on. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, the last bedlam in Stillwater. No TV yet. Oh gosh, if they make it Big Noon, that's such a vibe killer. If they do make it Big Noon, that's such a vibe killer. If they make it Big Noon, give me Oklahoma. If it's a night game in Stillwater, like I think it will be, like I think it should be. As things are shaping up now, Oklahoma State 3-2 in the Big-12. They're still in. Oklahoma 7-1. They're going to be top 10 at this point for some reason. Yeah, give me the Cowboys. Texas and Kansas State. How did this game turn out last year? Austin's a tough place to play. They lost to Texas by a touchdown. The year before, they beat Texas in Austin. They beat Texas the year before Manhattan. Man, they've kind of had Texas's number as of late. Hawkeyes are 7-8 straight up. This is the game. This is really the game. Let's see here. 3 weeks left. If you're 6-0 with 3 games left, you already got head-to-head against Oklahoma. Give me Texas in this one. Okay, I feel a lot better if it was in Manhattan, but got to play with the hands that you're dealt. BYU going across the country to Morgantown. I think they do it. I like BYU here. Do I? Yeah, I do. Cincinnati and UCF at home. Give me the Bearcats at home, specifically at home. Iowa State and Kansas. Do the Cyclones pick up a win here? Who does Kansas play next week? Kansas plays Texas Tech. Give me Kansas. I'm sorry, Iowa State. They're playing like Kansas State next week. Like a rival game. Like, yeah, give me that. But I don't think Texas Tech draws enough attention away from them to win there. Baylor and Houston. Give me Baylor. All right, final 3 weeks of the season. Texas Tech still in first place without a loss in the conference. 8-1 only loss to Alabama in the non-conference slate. As of right now, Texas Tech would be joining them. Those 2 teams haven't played yet. Texas Tech, the only other team with 1 loss, and there's a good group of 2 lost teams, including Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Iowa State still looking for their first conference win. The new additions kind of hovering right around 500 in the conference, except for UCF. They got a bad draw. I feel bad about that one. Week 11, let's get into it. Iowa State and BYU. I don't like, and this might be because I got bullied by Mississippi State fans. I don't like declaring that a team's not going to win a conference game, especially a team as gritty as Iowa State. But yeah, give me the Cougars here. I'm sorry. Kansas State and Baylor. Give me Kansas State, especially at home. That one does that one feels good. Feel good about that one. Oklahoma beats West Virginia, especially after losing Bedlam. They got to get dialed in now. Kansas and Texas Tech. Is week 12 what I think it is for Texas Tech? No. Who do they play next week? They play UCF. Okay, well let's break this down. Winner goes to 8-3. Who do I feel better about being 8-3? Give me Texas Tech. Give me Texas Tech. UCF and Oklahoma State. Give me UCF. Give me. I mean, I just 1-6 feels not great. I don't think I'm right there. Houston and Cincinnati. Did they play last year? Bearcats have won 8 of the last 10 meetings, including 7-2 against the spread. Covered the last 3. Give me the Bearcats. If the Bearcats are gonna be in a good spot here in the Big 12, we're gonna start to see it right about now. Texas and TCU. Give me the Frogs. Down goes Bevo. I don't feel great about this one, mind you, but I've seen it. I've seen TCU beat Texas fairly regularly recently. Like not just last year, not just that great game last year, but yeah, over the last few years, TCU's had their number. I think by this point, you can't really point to the losses on talent. It's week 11, so even though they have new players and key positions, they've been there for months now. So I think that they're dialed in. Texas early on, maybe. I might give them that. In Austin, maybe. In Fort Worth, in November. So after week 11, big shakeup with Texas losing to TCU. With one loss, they're still in the Big 12 title race. Them and Texas Tech each have one loss, although they're going to play. Is it week 12 or week 13? When do they play? Oh, okay, so is it week 13? Outstanding. But they're going to play. So one of those two teams is out. Next up, depending on who does win that, Kansas or Kansas State, Oklahoma, TCU now back in the thick of it. You know, I do feel a little bit better now. Because, yeah, if TCU loses that game, they're out of the Big 12 title race. They're probably feeling a jolt of urgency losing back-to-back games. I feel better about that one. Moving on, just a quick update throughout the rest of the conference. Baylor 6-4, BYU 5-5, Cincinnati 6-4, Houston 4-6, Kansas State 2-8, Kansas 7-2, Kansas State 8-2, Oklahoma 8-2, Oklahoma State 7-3, TCU 8-2, Texas 8-2, Texas Tech 8-2, UCF 5-5, West Virginia 3-7. They're not doing as well as I thought they would. Kansas State and Kansas, the Sunflower Showdown in Lawrence. Give me Kansas State. Give me Kansas State. I think they're a little bit better built for this moment. Wouldn't surprise me if this is the year that Kansas finally gets one back, but Give me Kansas State. They're both in the hunt for a Big 12 title. Kansas State's been here before. They know how to take care of business, especially late. Oklahoma and BYU. BYU at 5-5. Give me Oklahoma. Oklahoma does usually get upset by one dumb team every year. This feels right for that, but I don't know Brett Venables, so I don't know if that's going to be the same case. So I'm going to give Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt there. Cincinnati and West Virginia. Give me the Bearcats. Bearcats are doing good. I'm glad I found them some wins here. West Virginia, UCF, and Texas Tech. Give me the Red Raiders at home. They're in the Big 12 title hunt. I don't think they're going to lose their focus against UC. Well, okay, let's talk about this. Because they do play Texas next week. That's the perfect opportunity for them exactly to lose their focus. But I think the talent gap's there. Baylor and TCU. If it was in Waco, I'd give it to them. Yeah, give me the Frogs. Give me the Frogs here. Iowa State and Texas. Nope. Nope. Just the talent gap's a little bit too much there. Oklahoma State and Houston. Give me Oklahoma State. I think they're done losing games that they shouldn't lose. All right, so going into the final week of the season, Texas and Texas Tech, each with one loss. Winner's going to go to the Big 12 championship game. They play this week. Let's start talking about scenarios here. So, of course, Texas and Texas Tech, whoever wins that game, going to the Big 12 championship game. Outstanding. Can either of them make the Big 12 championship game without a win today? So, Texas has head-to-head over Oklahoma. They're going to have head-to-head over Kansas State. They would not have head-to-head over TCU. Let's look at tiebreakers here because odds are we're going to have a couple of teams. Okay, so if it's 3 teams, so if it's 2 teams, it comes down to head-to-head first, and then it goes record in common conference games, which I hope that we don't have to calculate that because that's going to be a nightmare. Then cumulative winning percentage of each tied team's conference opponents. Please don't let us get there. Highest ranking in the CFP poll following the last weekend of the regular season. If it's 3 more teams, head-to-head record. So if one team has beaten the other 2 teams, then they win. And then record against the next. Let's just finish this out. But yeah, winner of Texas and Texas Tech goes. At this stage of the game, it's just who do I like more? Who do I trust more? And I talk all this stuff about Texas, and I haven't seen it. I'm projecting. I haven't seen it from Texas Tech either. This Texas team is experienced. This Texas team is knocking on the door of exactly what they're trying to accomplish here. I think they win. As fun as it would be for Texas Tech to pull off the win here, I feel hypocritical talking about all this. I haven't seen it from Texas when I haven't seen it even more so from Texas Tech. Let's kind of go through a couple of these other ones. Kansas State beats Iowa State. That'd be a disappointing loss considering they're very much in the thick of it. Oklahoma State and BYU. Give me Oklahoma State. Boone Pickens Stadium. UCF and Houston. Give me UCF. I feel like they're way better than 2 conference wins. So I'm going to let them feast. Well, now that means that Houston only gets 1 conference win. Rough stuff. Cincinnati and Kansas. Give me Cincinnati at home. Baylor and West Virginia. Give me Baylor. All right. So then that just leads us with Oklahoma and TCU. So if Oklahoma wins, if TCU wins, they have 2 losses. They have the head to I think Kansas State probably goes because Kansas State beat TCU. I don't feel good about giving TCU 10 wins, though. Do I feel good about giving Oklahoma 10 wins? Okay, I think the difference for me here, all the analytics say that TCU's trending down. All those very same analytics tell me that Oklahoma's trending up. Give me Oklahoma. I think that they win in Norman against the Horned Frogs. So now we got to calculate these freaking tiebreakers. Sheesh. All right, so we're going to go back and make an amendment because I don't quite understand what the tiebreaker implications would be. And frankly, it seems easier just to kind of go through and see if there's any games that I don't like as much. And I found one. I had Oklahoma State beating Kansas State. I'm going to switch that back. Kansas State won 49-0 last year. I don't think it'll be nearly that bad. Boone Pickens is a lot tougher to play in, but I will give Kansas State the benefit of the doubt there. So now what that looks like here. So now that brings us to final standings. So Texas and Kansas State are going to be playing for the Big 12 championship game. Oh boy, that color is ugly. Let's go with that one. So here's how it shapes out. Here's how it shapes out. Baylor 7-5. They make a bowl game. BYU just misses out 5-7. Cincinnati 8-4. Sure did give them the benefit of the doubt. That I did not give to Houston 4-8. I gave them a whole monologue at the beginning of the episode about how impressed I was with them football wise, and I couldn't find more than one conference win. That's a bummer. Iowa State 2-10. I don't think it's nearly as much of an issue. I think the national media will kind of go and tell you that, the gambling that it's, oh boy, I don't like that layout. There we go. I think a lot of the national folks and kind of the folks that don't quite know much about these players are going to tell you that, well, they're losing so much players to this gambling scandal. That's true, but I think that more so handicaps their ceiling more than their floor. I don't think they're going to be so much worse off because they're losing Hunter Deckers, who had the most turnovers in the FBS, or a lot of non-real contributors. But it was a 4-win team last year with a win against an Iowa team that was struggling offensively to historic proportions. So very easily could have dropped down to 3 wins. And so, without the gambling scandal, you hope those players take a step up and you march towards the bowl game. But with those players gone, you have new players to fill in the spots for those not so good players. So I don't think that they take a step up, and I think they take a step back because of that. So it handicaps them a little bit. Kansas is 7-4. That feels right. That feels right. Does that math add up? I don't think it does. 7-4. That's 11. So that would be 8-4. 4 conference losses. I don't think they lose a non-conference game. So yeah, 8-4. That feels right. So with the amendments, Kansas State at 11-1. I mean, the schedule lines up favorably for them. Their non-conference schedule, they should win. They get UCF at home. Oklahoma State, that's the one that at first I gave to the Cowboys. But like I said, they beat them 49-0 last year. That's tough. They're 1-6 in Stillwater in their last 7. I mean, it'll be a close game, I think. But again, it'll be a close game. And who do you trust more in late games, Alan Bowman or Will Howard? I trust Will Howard. At Texas Tech, I think is a loss. Um, it's probably a situation where they lose one of those two games. I don't know if they lose both of them or they win both of them, but I think you lose one of those games. And then they beat TCU, beat Houston, lose to Texas, beat Baylor, beat Kansas, beat Iowa State. Yeah, that schedule feels like 11-1. I don't think that's too much of a stretch here. Oklahoma at 10-2, they take a bigger jump than I probably anticipated. But again, that feels like a pretty fair mark on their schedule. They'll blow through the non-conference or at Cincinnati, which is tough, but I think the talent beats them there. To Iowa State, they lose to Texas. UCF at home, at Kansas. I don't know if Kansas is a big home field advantage there. Then they lose at Oklahoma State. Then they have West Virginia. They go to BYU, which I guess could be flipped. And then TCU, they're in the same boat, I think, as TCU, but I think they're trending upwards and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I feel good about 10-2. Oklahoma State at 8-4 after the amendment. Not a bad year. That feels right. 9-3 for TCU. That probably feels a step too high, but I mean, we talk about this throughout the last hour. The schedule is what it is. Texas at 10-2. I mean, it is what it is. Texas Tech at 9-3, 7-2 in the conference, with losses to Texas and Baylor. UCF 6-6. This one feels harsh. I don't like this one as much. 6-6. If I were to give them another win, it'd be Cincinnati, but winning at Cincinnati is tough. So I don't know if I feel good about that at all. Yeah, I mean, that's the series that's been dominated by the home team. Bearcats have won last 3 of 4. They lost at UCF last year, beat them at home in 2021, beat them on the road in 2020. And I guess it's different things. They beat them in 2019, lost in Orlando in 2018. That's tough. It's tough for me to pick UCF at home. Maybe I don't know. There's got to be somewhere on the schedule where I might be wrong there, if I am to be wrong there. But we'll see. West Virginia 3-9. That feels harsh, but feels fair. It is what it is. But I mean, it's hard to find them wins. Yeah, maybe 4 wins. I don't think they get to 5. I definitely don't think they get to 6. But there we have it. Kansas State and Texas feels like a real possibility for the Big 12 title game in Arlington. So not too shabby there. But that's going to do it. I think we nailed it all. We'll have our championship edition episode out later this week where we talk about this Big 12 championship game, see how the playoff picture looks with all the conferences, and we finish out our season prediction here on the Cornhusker Connection Network. Lots of great stuff going on here on the channel. Of course, we got the Cornhusker Connection podcast coming out. I think we'll probably have 3 or 4 episodes this week. Special game day show that we'll have where it kind of combines all of our shows, including Bookie Brook and the Boys, where we talk about our sports bets. Go Big 12 or Go Home with Drew Russell, where we focus solely on the Big 12 and talk about how electric that conference is. And then throughout the week, we'll have other videos, clips, TikToks, all that fun stuff. So that'll do it for me here today. Of course, follow the channel, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Go Big Red.